black against one d4. Now if you like to play safe, solid chess, trying to equalise passively with the black pieces, well, I suggest you ask for your money back, because what I'm proposing to you here is an extra sharp and double-edged new system known as the Clarendon Court. The opening has the big advantage of being practically unknown, so if you watch this video you'll know more about it than almost anybody who hasn't. So what is the new Clarendon Court defence? After white opens with 1 d4, you attack the centre at once with c5, and if white presses on with 2 d5, black continues with the surprising move f5. It's not completely new. There is one small note on it in the 5-volume ECO, referring to a Russian game from 1971, which continued 3 knight c3, knight f6, 4 bishop g5, queen b6, 5 rook b1, d6, when after 6 knight h3 white got a big edge. My new idea is to play 5 h6 instead of 5 d6, so that if white takes the knight, then black can recapture with the queen and keep his pawn structure intact. This is the main line, which I'll be looking at in detail later. Apart from a couple of other games in the late 80s, that's about it theoretically, until my own game with Lev Albert from the New York Open in 1994 made it into Informer to 60. Since then, Russian Grandmaster Tukmakov has also used the system to defeat Laputin. One word of warning: with a brand new super sharp system starting on move 2, there's always going to be some danger. You can't have everything. Black can get a weakness on the e6 square, but I believe this to be quite manageable, and you should get plenty of counter chances. I've played the defence a number of times already in tournaments this year, and on every occasion I've gained time on the clock, and none of my opponents, including 2 Grandmasters, have been able to refute the opening. I've also analysed it at home, of course, and I'll be showing you plenty of original analysis as we go along. Incidentally, Fritz 3 has been unable to find anything wrong with it either. In fact, against Fritz, on a fast Pentium computer, I usually get completely winning positions out of the opening with black. I don't always win them, but that's another matter. After d4, c5 is the move I'm recommending. The most aggressive white reply is d5, which is almost certainly the critical move. And now we're already in the Clarendon Court. Black plays f5. There are 3 approaches that white can try when you play this opening. He can attempt to blast you off the board immediately with moves like e4 or even h4. There is the positional approach with g3, fianchettoing the king's bishop, and there is the sharpest and most critical line: 3 knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5. Finally, after c5, white does not have to advance the d-pawn. You have to be ready for passive moves like e3, c3, or knight f3, or for the slightly more aggressive e4, or even for d takes c5. But none of these moves pose a real threat, and I'll be giving you a fairly convincing way of dealing with them. When you play the Clarendon Court, there are various strange ways white can react from the very start. I'd like to deal with these first of all, since they should actually be quite good fun for black. Grandmaster Matthew Sadler played the slightly bizarre h4 against junior David Moscovich at Islington, London 1994. After knight f6, h5, he went on to win an amusing game. But I don't believe that losing so much time in the opening pushing the h-pawn can be a good idea for white. Moscovich played e6, but I think a much better move is b5, preparing to round up the d5 pawn with bishop b7. I think black is fine in this position. The advanced h-pawn is looking a bit irrelevant, and white has already got some problems defending his centre. Against the Dutch defence, white sometimes likes to gambit a pawn with e4, which is known as the Staunton gambit. Similarly, in the Clarendon Court, white can try to play 3 e4. It's certainly more dangerous than h4, I think. Black must take it. F takes e4. White continues knight c3, and black should play knight f6. This is what happened the first time I played the Clarendon Court proper, at the New York Open in 1994. There There are already several possibilities for white here. My opponent, J. Eugene Salomon, continued with bishop g5, d6, and now he wanted to get his pawn back, so he played bishop takes f6, and I recaptured with the e-pawn, and after knight takes e4, bishop e7, black is probably about equal already, and I went on to win a smooth ending with the two bishops in 47 moves. Anyway, white's idea of giving away the e-pawn, only to give up the two bishops a moment later to get it back, is not really very inspiring. A much more interesting way to play is 5g4, and in fact Toshkov-Kuczynski, one of the almost historical games with this opening, it was played in St. John 1988, went as follows. h6. That's to stop white dislodging the knight with g5. Bishop g2. And now black made a mistake with e5, because white was able to go h4, which prepares g5, kicking the knight around, and black couldn't really stop that happening. Instead of e5, a better move would have been d6, which attacks the pawn on g4, which stops white from going h4, because black could simply take the g-pawn. Instead, white has to go h3, and now black can go back to his old plan with e5. And the position's probably about equal. White shouldn't take the pawn en passant, because after black replies d5, he defends his e-pawn on e4 and prepares to capture the white e-pawn on e6 next. Black would be doing very well there. So by playing the moves in the right order, black's reached this position, where because white's advanced on the king side a little early, the black squares, in particular f4 and g5, are a touch weakened. If things go well, black might get the moves bishop e7, knight b8 to d7, knight f8, knight g6, and knight to f4 in one day. After e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, another completely untested idea is f3, offering a gambit pawn. I really don't know what's happening if black accepts the pawn, it's just unclear, but black can probably more safely go e3. This stops white getting a lead in development and slows down the game. Black can continue with the plan d6, and then g6 and bishop g7, and he should have a fairly acceptable position. Whenever I play the Fritz 3 program on my Pentium computer, it plays the rather weird move, 3 queen d3. This attacks the f-pawn, but after d6, I think the queen is just misplaced on d3. Perhaps the computer has been programmed to overrate the weakness of the pawn on e7. It is a backward pawn on an open file. But the whole point of the Clarendon Court is that usually white can't exploit this weakness, and so it isn't really a weakness. In some of my blitz games against the machine, Fritz has continued with the plan knight c3, bishop f4, fianchettoing the king's bishop with g3 and bishop g2, and then castling queenside. These moves don't coordinate very well, and in reply I've played something like g6, bishop g7, knight f6, castling kingside, and then expanding all my queenside pawns with a6 and b5, with a nice slow burning attack, just the sort of thing you want against a machine. Much more dangerous than queen d3 is to continue with 3 knight c3, knight f6, and now to play f3. In fact, this has never been played, though I've analysed it at some length with German international master Eckhard Schmidt-Diel. First we thought it might be a complete refutation of the Clarendon Court, but eventually we found the antidote. The idea is to build up in the centre with e4, and if black captures, to capture back with the pawn, and have the pawn break e5 later. Normal moves are bad for black. For example, if black continues d6, white goes e4. After the exchange in the centre, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Black has a problem. He needs to develop the bishop on f8, so he goes g6. And now white can play bishop b5 check. And, well, whatever black does here, he's in real trouble. If he goes bishop d7, the white squared bishops are going to come off, and later the e6 square will be very vulnerable to, for example, to white's knight on g1, going to f3, to g5, and then to e6. Alternatively, if black goes knight bd7, the e6 square this time isn't so weak because black's maintained his bishop on c8, but the problem is that after knight f3, the pawn break e5 is pretty unstoppable. White can support it with bishop c1 to f4, and if white gets e5 in, and he's going to, black's in real trouble. So the way black should reply against 4f3 is with a complete change of plan. He should play e5. Now the first point is if white captures this pawn en passant, d takes e6 en passant, black doesn't take back, he plays the slightly surprising move d5. And shortly he'll take back the pawn on e6 with his bishop. And white's move f3 is looking very strange here. Black's got a pretty good game. After e5, white should play e4. Now, a normal looking move for black here is d6. This is actually a mistake. White can go bishop b5 check. And now, however you interpose on d7, there's a slight problem with the pawn on f5. Instead of d6, black should play, and I think he must play in fact, f4, gaining space on the king's side. White can counterattack with g3, and now black has two possibilities. One is to gambit a pawn with d6, white captures on f4, now black plays knight h5, preparing queen h4 check. White's best here is bishop b5 check, black plays knight d7, and now white can capture on e5 with the pawn. Black plays queen h4 check, white plays king f1, and now a mistake would be knight g3 check, when white would capture on g3, black captures on h1, and white plays e6, winning the knight on d7. Better is to play pawn takes pawn, when, although black's a pawn down after, say, queen e1, queen f6, he's got quite a good development. He wants to go bishop d6, castle kingside, a6, and the problem for white is his king on f1's not very good, and it's just a murky, difficult position with white a pawn up but black having quite good play. The other possibility is to play 6 knight h5, which doesn't gambit a pawn. Now the disadvantage of this is that white could try to play d6 himself before black does. After d6, black can take on g3, white could play queen d5 here, and black's got queen f6. And Fritz, certainly for one, reckons this position's fine for black. The conclusion from all this home analysis is that an early e4 by white, with or without f3, poses no serious threat to black. In fact, he has very good chances to get the advantage, although I don't want to make any really definitive judgment since the territory is so uncharted.
Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess. without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damien for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.